Good morning, my friend. Grab yourself a cup of coffee, get settled in. I will be right with you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Drop me a note in the comments. Let me know you are here. Good morning, Michelle. How are you this morning? So, if you're living in Alberta, are you rushing around to get a haircut in the next couple of days? I'm hoping I can. Good morning, my friend. Welcome to Men Up with Mike. This is the show where we talk mental health, in particular for men, leadership, personal development, and all things about becoming a better version of you. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of pay yourself first. I'm sorry I wasn't here yesterday. I've had a little bit of dental work going on. And yes, Michelle, first day of vacation. So I've got a little bit of dental work coming up, so I'm gonna have to miss a couple of days here. Hey, good morning, Wes. How are you, my friend? Good to see you here. All right, before we dive into today's topic, I wanted to take a second and introduce you guys to an organization that recently had me on for their podcast that will be dropping in January. The organization is called Stance. STNCE, and I'm going to do a quick little share screen here and share with you. Stance's mission is to inspire women to confidently take ownership of their finances through open and informative conversations. Now, this is an initiative that is hosted by, put on, supported by EQ Bank, Canada's challenger bank, they will tell you. EQ Bank, I had the opportunity to build some great relationships at the highest levels there when I was working in the mortgage industry, when I still owned the mortgage brokerage. And Sarah and Kim are the two that sort of spearhead this Stance initiative. And it's just really fascinating. I was thrilled that they had me on to have conversations about empowering women in finance. And I thought it was pretty cool of them to have a dude on and be part of that conversation. So that should be coming out, I believe, in the middle of January is when they're going to start launching those episodes. So I'll make sure I share those with you. But in the meantime, if you are interested in learning more about personal finance, and I thought, today's theme, pay yourself first, this would be a good opportunity to highlight the work that Stance is doing. So if you get a chance, go check them out, stnce.ca. So Stance without the A. Go check them out. Have a look at what they are doing. All right. So drop me a note in the comments. Let me know you're here. Let me know what's going on today. I would love to make this a conversation. And this may not be exactly what you're expecting it to be. So the concept of pay yourself first, many of you may be familiar with when it comes to personal finance. David Chilton, the Wealthy Barber, I think was the first guy to really sort of popularize this concept of pay yourself first. And in the Wealthy Barber, he talked about putting aside 10% of your income for savings. His whole thing was when you start young, that will compound and grow over time. But he talked about this concept of pay yourself first, meaning that first 10% of income that comes into your household. Hey, good morning, Anne. How are you? That first 10% of income that comes into your household, take that off your paycheck immediately and drop it into a savings account. So pay yourself first. Because what he talked about was, if you wait until all your bills are paid, all your recreational stuff is done, and then you paid yourself or you set up your savings, once that was finished, that oftentimes there was nothing left. Whereas when you pay yourself first, if you take that piece that's allocated or dedicated to savings and just put that aside immediately as if it never came in, the impact that that has, because it happens each and every time. And guess what? You adjust your lifestyle to fit what's left over rather than adjusting your savings to fit what's left over. Anne says, worked with RSPs in retirement planning for over 40 years. Pay yourself first is not new to me. So yeah, absolutely. Again, this concept is tried and true when we're talking about personal finance. But today I want to take that concept. So again, pay yourself first when we're talking about personal finance. That just means take your savings, take it off your paycheck immediately, pay yourself first. Do the savings first. And then the rest will take care of itself. So yes, we understand that in the context of personal finance, but what about that concept, the pay yourself first concept, in terms of personal development? What about that concept in the terms of healthy relationships? What about that concept in the terms of your marriage or your intimate partner connection? What would that look like if we applied that same bit of wisdom, that same bit of logic to our relationships? So when we're talking about personal finances, the idea of saving first or paying yourself first is that if we wait till the end, if we wait till all of the bills are paid, if we waited till we've spent all the money, there's nothing left to save. So we need to shift that mindset to pay ourselves first. So I want to suggest that this equally holds true when we're talking about our personal life, when we're talking about our relationships, when we're talking about our work. How do we pay ourselves first? You know, we often talk about this concept of don your own oxygen mask before assisting others. It's the same type of concept. So often I hear this with men I work with, women I work with, that talk about putting their partner first or putting their children first. And I'll take care of myself with whatever's left over. And again, the problem becomes is when we do it that way, when we pay ourselves last, there's often nothing left over. There is often nothing left over at all for us. And that's not a good thing. That's very problematic. Pay yourself first in all things, Anne says. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I find it really, really interesting. I think I've shared this story with you before. When my kids were very little and I was still married, we went to a family wedding. And it was my cousin who was getting married, and it was my Aunt Sharon. If you've seen my TEDx, you've heard the story of my Aunt Sharon and how much I admire her. But I remember at this particular wedding, we sat down we were at a table with my aunt, the mother of the bride at that time. And we were having a conversation about relationships and kids and, you know, the challenges that come with having a young family. You know, we were still pretty new parents. So I think we'd had our second child by then. I'm not sure. We might have only had one. But I remember distinctly having this conversation with my Aunt Sharon, and she talked about this concept of putting your relationship first, putting your relationship as a priority above the kids. And again, I thought that was just fascinating because I think we get cultured, we get inundated with this concept of kids first no matter what. But what she talked about was one of the reasons that her and her partner, her husband, and this is her second husband, the stepdad to my cousin, who, for all intents and purposes, raised the kids because they split, or they got together when the kids were very young. But she talked about how for them, they had always made their relationship the priority. And as a result, the kids flourished and the kids benefited. I mean, obviously it didn't mean they neglected the kids, but they always put their relationship first. And when we walked away from that, that was a game changer for me. That was a real paradigm shift, that we could actually pay ourselves first in our relationship, even above our children, that we could put our relationship as a priority. And it was fascinating to me. And I thought it was so brilliant because, again, if we don't have that healthy relationship as the mother and father, it's going to be pretty hard to convey that down to the kids. And when we left there, and this would be why, partly why, my ex-wife and I are no longer together. She disagreed with that vehemently. She really thought that was a bad idea, that it was always kids first, kids first, kids first, kid first. What does Michelle have to say? When I disclosed whether husband's physically abused, sometimes you need to do your needs are last. I'm sorry, Michelle. We get sort of conditioned, socialized to accept that our needs come last. And of course, Michelle's talking in the context of women. And I think maybe that's where we see it predominantly. Certainly when I work in the arena of domestic violence or abusive relationships, that is where we see it for sure. That is absolutely where we see it. Dana says, if we take care of ourselves, we'll have so much to give others. Our lives will be full of happiness and peace if we're doing it from a healthy heart and mind. Yeah. And we get caught up in this. If I can just take care of my partner, then things will be better. If I can help them navigate their pain, then things will be better. And I'll take care of myself once that's all done. But as we talked about, the problem becomes that if you put yourself last and you say, I'll take care of myself once all this other stuff gets done, it never happens. And the same holds true in our work environment. I get that work ethic is important. If you've watched me for any length of time, you know that that is one of my core values, work ethic. Do the fucking work, Mike. Do the fucking work. But by the same token, sometimes we need to slow down to go faster. Sometimes we need to be able to take that pause. Michelle, I'm going to call on you. Sometimes we need to stop and take that lunch, even when we feel like we can't, even when we feel like we don't have time. Sometimes we just need to pay ourselves first. Because yeah, Dana, as you say, if we don't do that, we've got nothing left to give. And while that may be sustainable in the short term, it's certainly not sustainable in the long term. And what often ends up happening is resentment, bitterness, nervous breakdown. We fall apart. We get burnt out. So whether we're talking about personal finance, how do we pay ourselves first in personal finance? Take it right off our paycheck. First 10% goes into savings. Nothing happens until we've got that savings put aside. In our relationships, what if you took that first 10% of love and gave it to yourself? What if the other person didn't matter until you mattered? What would that look like? What would it look like if you took that first 10% of your heart and gave it back to you first, and then projected the rest of that love out? Do you think you would love more, or would you love less? What are your thoughts? Michelle says many women are socialized to accept suffering as their duty. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Neil, self-care, boundaries is so important. Dana says no one can truly love you until you love yourself first. Yeah, this is so true. And you know, it's interesting because I think all of this knowledge, this information is much more prevalent than it was a decade ago. So we all know the cliches, we all know the truisms. But how do we get to a place where we can actually practice them? How do we get to a place where we can actually implement them in our lives? And this is why I will talk about these things over and over and over and over and over again. I'll try and say them in different ways, articulate them in different ways, so that maybe you can find something that resonates with you. I was working with somebody the other day and I shared with them one of my stories, one of my strategies, and they immediately recognized it as a story in their own life and adapted it to that. And now that will stick with them. So my hope is that the next time you're feeling burnt out, the next time you're feeling stressed out, the next time you're feeling like you're not being taken care of in your relationship, you will ask that question. What do I need? What does Mike need? What does Dana need? What does Wes need right now? And don't be afraid to ask that question. We get conditioned that asking that question, what do I need, is selfish, which is absolute horseshit. It's not selfish. It doesn't mean you neglect your partner. It doesn't mean you neglect your children. It doesn't mean you neglect your job. It just means that you pay yourself first. Because when you pay yourself first, you've got so much more to give. Michelle says, what does Mike need? Mike needs you, baby. You do a very good job of taking care of me. And I think we both do a very good job of taking care of ourselves first. So that when we come together, we are tight, we are solid. Mike needs a vacation. We've got a little mini vacation coming up. I think this Christmas, this December, it's going to be more of a staycation, but it's going to be turning things off a little bit. Maybe get some writing done, do those kinds of things. Anne is all caps saying, this site needs emojis. We don't have emojis on the chat window at mikecameron.ca/live. I'm sorry, Anne. So tell me, my question for you guys today, where can you pay yourself first? Where can you make you matter before you make somebody else matter? How can you practice that? Dana, how do you practice that self-love? How do you actually put that into practice? Again, understanding that these things are often easier said than done. So experiment. Find these things. Don't let yourself be a shame toilet for someone else. That was a conversation I had the other day. Shame toilet, which is really just code for being abused by somebody that's hurting. And that's not okay. That's not okay. Here and now, before anything else, help yourself. Neil says, be easy on yourself, compassion for yourself, self-love. Yeah, all of those things. Just continue to practice, continue to experiment. For me, I'm going to take that mantra, pay yourself first. Neil loves the shame toilet. Yeah, when somebody else is dumping on you because of their shame, you become their shame toilet. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. Like, I love that. This is why I love having these conversations, because these sayings, these things keep coming out. And yeah. Dana says it comes from years of working to make others happy and failing in their eyes. Then you wake up and you realize that you need to be happy. Yeah. Yeah, there's, you know, for many of us, there's this light bulb moment. There's this switch that gets flicked. It's like, you know what? Maybe it's time to start taking care of me. And that's okay. Neil says, isn't life really practice? We've never been here before, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why, Neil, I don't know if you've seen me talk about this, but this is why I always talk about, I don't want you to try anything. None of the techniques, tactics, tricks, strategies that I talk about with you here, I don't want you to try any of them. Instead, I want you to practice all of them. When we switch from trying to practicing, it gives ourselves permission to move forward. It gives ourselves permission to continue. When we try, it's this pass or fail mentality. When we practice, we know that with each repetition, with each little practice, we get just a little bit better each and every time. All right, my friends, if you are watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hop over to mikecameron.ca, hit that community tab, sign up for the community, drop us a note, introduce yourselves, let us know who you are in the community. Just getting a little bit tired of some of the negativity on Facebook and some of the other platforms. Really want to create a community where we can just share some of the goodness, the wholeheartedness that I hope to espouse here. And there'll be some right now. There's my meditation video is up there. I just released that the other day. So that's free, but you've got to be registered to get there. So anyways, my friends, as always, continue to make beautiful shit happen. And if you want a shirt or you want a copy of my book, you can do so on the website as well, mikecameron.ca. Christmas is coming. Gifts, gifts, gifts. I've also got a gift version of my book where I will send the recipient a video explaining the book. Yeah, my brain's not working this morning for some reason. I think I'm already in vacation mode. So I will not be here tomorrow morning, but we will be back Monday and Tuesday. It looks like I am going to have a special guest, a fellow by the name of Adam Campbell. Adam is a incredible athlete. He's a sponsored athlete, mountain runner, climber, just an incredible dude who sadly lost his wife to an avalanche this year and has been speaking out about men's mental health. So hopefully the stars will align, and Adam will join me on Tuesday. We will have some conversation around a variety of different topics, but I expect we will talk about men and grief and how we deal with that stuff. So Dana says people also have to make have to be able to ask themselves what makes them happy and then listen. Yeah, this is why ask that question. What does Dana need right now? You know, you can ask what your partner needs all the time, and that's fine. But also slide that other question in there. What does Mike need? And as I was telling somebody yesterday, the answer isn't as important as the question. So even if you don't have the answer to that, what does Mike need right now? That's okay. Just keep asking the question, because that'll keep it front of mind, and that'll keep that pay yourself first mentality moving forward. All right, my friends, I'm out. As always, continue to make beautiful